Welcome to the Marsal Family School of Education's Innovator Showcase series. This series connects you to people, ideas, and innovations that are transforming education in the U.S. and around the world. My name is Don Purok. I'm a professor of educational policy, leadership, and innovation in the Marsal School. Today's conversation features my colleague, Rebecca Quintana. Rebecca is an associate professor of education practice in the Marsal School. We'll be discussing Rebecca's work developing open access learning opportunities, including opportunities focused on learning experience design and generative AI. Please join me in welcoming Rebecca to the Innovator Showcase. It's my honor today to welcome Rebecca Quintana to the Marsal Education Innovator Showcase series. So, welcome.
Thank you, Don. It's my pleasure to be here with you and with our viewers and listeners, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
So, as we get our conversation started, I'm sure that our viewers and our listeners would be interested to hear a little bit about your work as a professor, as a researcher at the University of Michigan.
Sure, I'd be happy to share that. So my work is situated within the Designing for Innovation, Learning, Instruction, and Technology concentration within Educational Studies at the Marsal Family School of Education. My teaching and scholarship is squarely rooted in design, and most recently that's been focused on learning experience design. So I can explain a little bit about sort of my work in that area and a little bit more about LXD as a profession.
That would be terrific.
Okay, good. So as co-lead of our Learning Experience Design Graduate Certificate Program, along with Professor Chris Quintana, I have taught about the profession of LXD and cultivated opportunities for learners and students at the Marsal School, as well as students across the university, to learn alongside learning professionals who are engaged in learning experience design work. We seek to give them opportunities to work in authentic contexts and really develop skills and competencies that would be applicable in future work situations for them. So I'll just explain a little bit about learning experience design, or as I'm calling it, LXD, so that our listeners and viewers can have a sense of what I mean by that. So it can be helpful to think of LXD across three dimensions. So the first being practice, the doing of LXD. So this is sort of the practical knowledge, practical skills that we want students to be able to apply in various work scenarios. So that could be related to core competencies, which I'll speak about in a moment, as well as just attitudes and habits of mind of a learning professional. There's then the products of LXD, so the design itself. So that could be a completed course, that could be a completed museum experience, sort of the outcome of all of the work and the process that has gone into the design. And then a sort of related dimension is the profession of LXD. So recently within the field, we've seen a number of scholars who really focus their attention on studying the work of learning experience designers and studying the products of learning experience designers. So this is kind of a third dimension that creates that complete picture of what we mean when we say learning experience design. You asked me about my scholarship earlier, so I'll just mention that my scholarship can be thought of in relation to the 6 core competencies that we developed for the certificate. The first one is applying learning theories, and of course this is something that educators of all sorts do, but we do feel it's important for our students to learn specifically about what it means to apply a learning theory within a design and how that can be manifest and what that looks like. Secondly, integrating inclusive design principles. So we always want to foreground equitable, inclusive design practices. We want to make sure that our students are considering the needs of learners from the outset in any design process. So that's something that we really do emphasize and work with our students on. The third relates to kind of a practical aspect, which is creating design resources and documentation. So it's important to be able to communicate effectively throughout a design process, to show work in various stages of development, whether that be sort of an early mock-up or a later version of something that you are seeking feedback on. But it's important that learning experience designers be fluent in all sorts of ways of representing their ideas and getting feedback from project stakeholders. Fourth, the use of technology and thinking about specifically technology affordances and constraints. We know that learning technologies can be very powerful, but they are not necessarily well suited to every situation, and we certainly wouldn't want to apply a technology in an instance where it wouldn't be effective. So learning experience designers really need to understand what it is a technology can offer in terms of the types of interactions it can support for learning, as well as some of the restrictions or constraints in the feature set, and then be able to apply that thoughtfully and judiciously within a project. Fifth, the use of research and evaluation skills. So we're not necessarily expecting that learning experience design students are fully engaged in academic research, but they should be very well versed and very well spoken in being able to speak with stakeholders about recent educational research and sort of how they are making recommendations for any type of design project, to sort of root that in literature and to provide a rationale behind their recommendation. That's especially important when working with faculty who really sometimes just like to know, like, well, why would you recommend that I do it that way? Being able to speak from the literature can be a very useful skill. And then finally, six, an important thing for all of us is to think about fostering workplace skills and professional relationships. It's important that we do that effectively so that we can sort of smooth over any bumps in the road along the way within a design process, which of course are likely to come up, and sort of be able to work effectively in collaborative partnership with our stakeholders. So those are the six that I won't elaborate now, but my research is kind of grounded in those six areas, but I mention it today because it really is sort of the crux of our learning experience design certificate, these six core competencies.
So Rebecca, in the Marsal Family School of Education, I know that you've been working hard to create open learning opportunities as a complement to the campus-based learning opportunities that you were just describing. These open learning opportunities are available to a wide audience in Michigan, in the United States, around the world. My hunch is that in creating these resources, you draw on the work that you just described, your work as a professor, your work as a researcher. And I'm wondering, what motivation sits behind this focus on open learning opportunities?
Yeah, I think to answer that question, I can speak to some professional experiences that I've had over the years working alongside learning professionals who work in developing open online courses, specifically MOOCs. So I've seen sort of firsthand what they do and the power or the potential of these types of courses to support learning broadly in ways that are very interesting and powerful. So I'll speak to the acronym of MOOC, if you don't mind. So MOOCs stand for Massive Open Online Courses. So you mentioned open, but I'll talk about all four components there. So they're massive in the sense that technically, as many numbers of learners who want to enroll can be part of this course. There are no limits on enrollment. We could have 5 learners enroll, 50, 500, 5,000. It really just depends on who comes and who's interested in taking the course. So thinking about the design of those, you have to think in terms of scaling up and creating course designs that work for any number of learners. They're open in the sense that there's no prerequisite required. Learners can enroll if they're interested, if they have a laptop and internet connection. They are able to be part of the learning community. They're online, so they are available anytime, anywhere, sort of not within particular time frames, but they can be taken on demand. And then they are courses, which may sound obvious, but when we speak about learning experience design, we're talking about developing structured sequences of a learning experience that are supportive of student learning, really thinking about scaffolding, thinking about providing learners with a lot of feedback on the work that they're doing so they're motivated to continue and ultimately earn a certificate in their MOOC. So all of that to say, as part of being part of that work environment, I was able to see firsthand, the potential of these types of courses to support learning in interesting ways. So that is what really motivated Professor Chris Quintana and myself to think about, well, we've had such great success with our learning experience design campus-based graduate certificate. what would it look like to create an open online version of that, and to be able to offer sort of the core competency ideas that I spoke about earlier, discussion about what it's like to be a learning professional in the field, maybe bringing in different experts or guests and things like that, to really give our global learners a taste of what we are talking about in our certificate. Here, our campus-based certificate. And just sort of to add on to that, over the years, and we continue to receive these types of inquiries, we've had learners just reach out from various places within Michigan, within the United States, and across the globe to say that they were interested in taking our Learning Experience Design Graduate Certificate, which they can see on the Marsal website. And unless they're enrolled as a student at the University of Michigan, a graduate student, that's not available to them. So we really wanted to sort of put out there a version of our course that could be accessed by anyone, anytime, anywhere, in an open sense. So that is sort of the motivation, and it's been exciting to see how that has played out.
Now, you recently developed 2 open online learning series that have been very well received by learners. The first you just started to allude to, an Introduction to Learning Experience Design, is sort of MOOC complement to the campus-based Learning Experience Design Certificate. And the second, Generative AI, Artificial Intelligence, as a Learning Design Partner. Now, both of these series are available through Michigan Online. I'm curious, tell me more about the first of the 2 series, an Introduction to Learning Experience Design, the one that builds on the campus-based certificate that you've been describing earlier.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, the series that's available online is based on our graduate certificate, our campus-based certificate here. But we did have to sort of think about restructuring it a little bit differently for our online audience, just in ways that sort of provided that orientation to the profession that we were hoping we could do in our first course, which is called Orientation to the Profession. Then we do a little bit of a dive into theories, learning theories, and design frameworks in course 2. And then in course 3, we really think about the course development process and actually creating all of the rich resources that learners engage with in a learning experience, as well as evaluating the efficacy of our designs. So that's how we structured our MOOC series in 3 parts and 3 courses. But in that first course, as I said, Orientation to the Profession, we really just wanted to get MOOC learners excited about what the profession has to offer and what it might look like to be part of that profession. In terms of the content of the series, it's grounded in those 6 core competencies that I talked about and that we teach in class. And so our online learners are introduced to the learning theories that students here at Marsal would be learning about, not just in our certificate, but of course across all of their coursework, the learning design frameworks and approaches, as well as assessment and evaluation strategies. But we wanted to really give the online learners a taste of what it's like to be a learning experience designer. So our students are in our certificate, our campus-based certificate, have a chance to essentially participate in an internship or a residency-like experience within the Center for Academic Innovation. And so we knew that something like that wouldn't necessarily be possible for our online learners, and we wanted to create like an authentic, immersive opportunity for our online learners to see what it's like to sit at the table of a design process. So we thought about how we could do this, and we arrived at using extended reality to create or simulate sort of a design process from start to finish. We scripted a 3-part sequence, one per course, that sort of maps to an entire design process from the beginning to an evaluation component. We have the MOOC learner sort of start as a more novice LXD, and then gradually throughout the sequence they become more experienced and they're asked to take on increasingly complex tasks in the scenario, which is interactive. And this whole scenario is based, as you know, on the design process for one of your online series, open online series done. And so we had fun sort of working on that together. So if anyone does check it out, you'll see us again in a very different kind of format. But learners can interact, in these immersive, you say extended reality. Well, how would that work in a MOOC? We're able to use authoring software that learners can use their laptops to interact. There's choice points, decisions that they have to make, things they have to verbalize, and sort of that will make the next part of the sequence happen and so forth. So it can be done through a laptop. It can be done through an application on their cell phone if they want to do it that way, or if they happen to have a virtual reality headset available, or if classes, if professor wanted to use these in a class setting and had access to some virtual reality headsets, you can actually put on a headset and it's completely immersive. So we thought this was a pretty neat way of kind of giving that authentic experience to our MOOC learners. And I was just recently reviewing some comments on LinkedIn, and one learner has remarked that those virtual meetings really brought the course to life for them. So that's kind of an encouraging sign that it may not be exactly like what it's like to work professionally, but it gives us a sense, like a simulated sense of what that's like. So that just gives you a bit of a taste of the Learning Experience Design series.
That really seems like an incredible resource for learners. The extended reality component seems to really try to create in the online space exactly the type of highly valued internship experience that people have on campus in the Center for Academic Innovation as part of the Learning Experience Design Certificate. But you followed the first series almost immediately with a second, Generative AI as a learning design partner.
Yes.
So I'm interested to learn about this second series too.
Yes. So these things kind of happened in parallel. And as we were developing our Learning Experience Design series, which was quite a long process, it took us almost 2 years to do it. We were recognizing that there were rapid developments in the use of Gen AI, and these ideas were becoming salient within the profession. And we sort of wanted to include something about this as a way to augment professional practice. But we really couldn't do it in that first series just with the way, we already had our course designed, and it just didn't quite feel like it would make sense to add that on. So we wanted to do something a little bit more focused, sort of as a complement to the LXD online series. And when the Center for Academic Innovation issued a call for proposals for short courses focused on generative AI and the future of work, we thought, maybe this is a chance for us to do that piece that we had hoped to do earlier. So we submitted a proposal, and were invited to create a course series. So the second series on Gen AI as a learning design partner is much shorter. Each course is 3 to 5 hours in length, and it's really meant to sort of be something you could either take after the LXD certificate, or if you were already working in the profession and just kind of wanted to become familiar with that concept or think about the uses of Gen AI in practice, you could take that separately. But they certainly work together. Our original series online was much longer. Each course was about 20 to 24 hours, so it's a little bit more in-depth and intensive. But yeah, so in our second series, we really had to challenge our thinking because the topic of generative AI as a learning design partner was still one we were discovering ourselves. Of course, we'd thought about it, and we'd started to talk about some of these ideas in our campus-based certificate and in class. But in terms of being able to present something, to an audience of global learners, it was a challenge to do that because we were still exploring. So we structured it kind of according to that exploration perspective. And in our first course, we really asked our MOOC learners to consider the design process as a whole and identify places within that process where it might make sense to consider the use of Gen AI to sort of augment practice, where it might be most useful or valuable. And then in the second course, we really made an effort to provide real-life demonstrations or use cases of how a learning experience designer could use generative AI throughout the design process. So we selected a few different tasks, like refining learning outcomes, mapping alignment of learning outcomes with course items and assessments. We talked about the use of Gen AI to prepare first drafts of things like quizzes and activities. And that was sort of the focus of course 2. And then the focus of course 3 kind of zoomed out again and talked about the overall strategy for the use of Gen AI within design contexts and how to articulate those strengths and limitations to project stakeholders and to stakeholders at large. So that's kind of the structure of the the three courses in the second series. But it was a lot of fun to put together, and we certainly learned a lot ourselves.
The use of generative AI as a design resource may seem a bit abstract for some of our viewers, some of our listeners, and I understand that even since your online series launched, you've continued to develop models of how generative AI can work and how it can be used in ways that may surprise our viewers and our learners. I'm wondering if you'd be open to demonstrating some of your newest work and to sharing what you're discovering about the use of generative AI in educational contexts.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So one of the things that I personally enjoy about learning design and designing online courses is the ability to experiment and try new things with our collaborators. So when the opportunity arose for me to create my own video avatar of myself, I eagerly volunteered to be able to think about ways that maybe this could potentially be used within course designs moving forward. So with this technology, taking the video avatar that's been recorded, I can provide a script and then a video is generated that looks and sounds like me. So you're probably wondering, well, what could this look and sound like in a course or series? So maybe it would make sense to show you. So in the context of an online course, I can think of a variety of ways that a tool like this could be used or an avatar like this could be used. For instance, maybe it could be used to add personal touches, such as welcome messages or pre-recorded feedback in response to a selection that a learner might make in a multiple choice quiz, for example. So I kind of played around with this and made up an example of what a welcome message could look like in the Gen AI for Learning Design series. So let's have a look. Welcome to the Generative AI as a Learning Design Partner short course series, where we explore the innovative intersection of artificial intelligence and learning design. In this series, we delve into the potential of generative AI tools to revolutionize the way we conceptualize, develop, and implement learning experiences. Through interactive lessons and hands-on activities, you will discover how to integrate generative AI seamlessly into the learning design process, enhancing creativity, efficiency, and accessibility. We've designed this course for anyone interested in the use of generative AI as a tool to support learning design. Whether you are an instructor in higher education or in K-12 settings, an instructional designer or learning experience designer, corporate trainer, or training specialist, we hope you will find the course to be informative and inspirational. That's pretty good. But if I were to use this approach in a teaching context, I would definitely want to be totally transparent with learners about what is authentic, what is really like a recorded version of myself, and what is simulated, although it may be obvious, I don't know. But in terms of the way an avatar like this could potentially be used, I think it would be important to have sort of a consistent, predictable approach. So perhaps it's always used for, welcome messages or sort of weekly summaries or things like that. And learners would just kind of get used to the rhythm of that. Maybe it would be used as a way to explain concepts further, sort of do a deep dive into things that we wouldn't typically record or create a video of due to time and resources constraints. So, it could be interesting to experiment with this concept further, which I may do, and actually add some things into our online series, and then get learner feedback on what it's like to sort of have an instructor that is created through this video avatar approach. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes, and maybe we can have another conversation again and report back.
How did you feel the first time you watched yourself as an avatar in an example like the one that we just shared?
Yeah, it's a bit uncanny. I mean, it feels a little surreal. People who know me well will say, oh, that doesn't quite capture you. But people who don't know me as well think it looks pretty good. And so it's kind of interesting. Of course, you're sort of hypercritical and observant when it's yourself. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely see the potential for it. And these kinds of technologies will only get better and better. This might be a little stilted or a little sort of I think it sort of dulls the expression a little bit of how I might actually communicate. But it's pretty good, so stay tuned.
Your work on the Learning Experience Design series, the Generative AI series is really remarkable. And I'm curious about all that goes into producing open learning resources of the sorts that you've been talking about. In fact, you mentioned that the first series actually was a 2-year development process. So who are your collaborators
Yeah.
in the Marsal Family School of Education at the University of Michigan, and how do you work together to create resources of the sort that you've been talking about, of the sort that you just demonstrated?
Yeah, I mentioned the first series was 2 years. The second series, the shorter courses, were I think 6 months in total. So we we definitely sped up our development process. In terms of the collaborators, certainly Professor Chris Quintana, I must mention, he's not here today, but we worked on both series together. So my collaborator there. But I do want to kind of highlight the contributions of the many folks that and the many places that we've worked in order to make this happen. So first, the Center for Academic Innovation, which I mentioned as a site of the residency for the Learning Experience Design certificate that's campus-based, was the one that put out the calls for proposals initially for both projects and invited us to become part of that work, the Future of Work project and the Generative AI project. And so, without the support of their Learning Experience Design team, their project management team, and the media design team, none of this would have been possible for us to do on our own. So it was a tremendous opportunity to work with them, to work in their studios, to create these open online resources, which, I've been thinking about different ways to use those too, beyond just within the MOOC space, but pulling those into teaching opportunities or sharing them in different ways. So, they can be reused and repurposed, which is exciting as well. So that was a great privilege to work with them. And also the XR component, the extended reality component, as I mentioned, they have a whole team there of extended reality artists and creators that were able to make that learning sequence possible. So it was wonderful to work with them on that. And then secondly, I want to highlight the partnership we have with our professional learning colleagues at the Marsal Family School. So, over the years, we've had so many conversations together about, various strategies, ways of engaging broad audiences, how we might do that in different ways, even the conversation we're having today. And so that's been tremendously formative in helping us think about these topics and has been influential and supportive as well. And then I think I need to spotlight the work of our certificates, our campus-based certificate students over the years. We've run this certificate now, I think, over 6 years. So it's been many cohorts of our students who have gone through it. We've had different faculty and staff involved, and we've gotten a lot of feedback and support, which we've always tried to integrate into the next iteration to make improvements. And so folks have just been so open and willing to share about their experiences there that has really helped to shape all of this. So those would be the 3 that I would want to point to. Yeah.
My experience is that with any initiative as ambitious as these 2 learning experiences, some things always go well according to plan. And at the same time, unexpected issues, unexpected challenges always seem to arise that complicate things. I'm curious to know what you see as a few of the big successes, the big wins, and what do you see as a few of the big challenges that your team has experienced in bringing these series to life?
Yep. So we've already talked about in the Introduction to Learning Experience Design online series, the 3-part immersive learning sequence that we developed, which was a big success. But I will say beyond that, I think a success of that was being able to think about creating an accessible version of those immersive experiences for all learners who might want to engage with them. So we really followed a universal design for learning approach where we aim to create multiple means of engagement with that sequence. So beyond just the laptop or a cell phone or virtual reality headset options, we created additional options where learners could work through that sequence by reading a script or by watching a video where they would have a pause in the video to be able to make choices and so forth. So we really tried to recreate that immersive sequence in different ways so that learners could engage in whatever way they wanted to at that particular time. And so we really see this approach as being broadly beneficial because learners can choose to engage in multiple ways, even experiencing the same content through different modalities. So I could imagine a learner perhaps using their phone, to experience the immersive version of the sequence, but then they might want to come back to it later and read through the script just to sort of review the key concepts. So we think this sort of universal design for learning approach is very beneficial and also serves as a good model for other types of work that might be seeking to do these kinds of ambitious technology-based learning experiences. So I see that as a success. And we've heard from learners too that they have appreciated sort of that those options available to them. So that would be a success. And then in terms of a challenge, I'll move to the other series that we've been talking about, the Generative AI as a learning design partner. One challenge that comes to mind is that we wanted to develop a series that would remain current and up to date in light of all of the rapid changes that we can observe and anticipate in the field. So we really aim to design this series in a way where the basic concepts that we presented would remain relevant. So we did provide some demonstrations in the second course that I mentioned that could become out of date quickly. But we tried to create them in such a way that we could add new examples or swap in new examples without breaking the course. So, as the technology changes and as the approaches change, we could sort of add in new examples. And who knows, perhaps some of the new examples that we create could be created using the technology that we just looked at, where we could use video avatars instead of recorded content, where instructors could develop these themselves. Sort of lowers the threshold there for them to be able to create their own online resources. So just a couple of thoughts there on the big challenges and the big successes.
The matter that you were just speaking to, developing a resource like an online learning series, it takes years, months to develop, is complicated by the fact that the particular work that you do is meant to serve a very fluid space. Things are always changing. How do you see these spaces evolving in the near future? As more learners engage open learning opportunities, as more people enter the profession of learning experience design, and especially as artificial intelligence continues to develop and to enter the education space. I know it requires you to pull out your crystal ball, but if you could look a little bit into the future, I'm wondering how you see these dynamic spaces that you're trying to serve evolving, developing in the near future.
Yeah, so when I think about the way that the development of open online, or not necessarily online, but open resources might evolve, and when I think about the profession of learning experience design and how that might evolve, it's hard not to think about the potential of generative AI to influence both of those spaces. So I'm going to speak to that sort of angle of things. And we know that artificial intelligence has been around for a long time in the education space. But recently there has been a heightened interest in the use of generative AI tools within those educational spaces. And I think we can probably all remember what it was like to try ChatGPT and those kinds of tools for the first time. And we started to realize pretty quickly that, we were going to start to witness a major shift in how we operate in different spaces, in workspaces, in education spaces, in design spaces. And as can happen with, the hype cycle of these things, initially there's sort of an explosion of interest, if you will, with people trying a lot of different things out. But then at the same time, a lot of valid concerns expressed over, the algorithms themselves, including privacy issues and the data reflecting potentially biased views of the world. And so, as this has sort of unfolded, we've seen that starting to be addressed in different ways, so such as universities creating their own closed Gen AI tool systems with special protections in place. So that might make educators feel a little bit more comfortable engaging. And of course, as a learning design scholar and educator, I also have concerns about important learning processes being bypassed through the use of these tools. So we want to have students sort of think about the core competencies and skills that they need to develop. We don't want them to miss out on sort of those key fundamental skills that they need to have to be able to discern whether the output of what is being given through Gen AI is of high quality or useful and things like that. So I do sort of have concerns about moving into that space too quickly when someone is newer to a profession. And, I think that now that the initial hype and excitement around Gen AI is starting to fall away, now we're kind of in an interesting space where we can truly think about the most fruitful and ethical uses of Gen AI for, creating open resources or for use in the learning experience design profession. And the title of our series kind of hints at this, the second series, but a promising direction could be to think of Gen AI as an extension of our work, or even as a partner, if we're comfortable with that analogy. And it allows us to sort of shape and draft sort of early parts of our work, and it also allows us to refine sort of more fully developed parts of our work. And it's something that can enhance or augment what we do, but of course we always need to keep in mind that we need to ensure that humans remain in the loop and that we allow sort of humans to do what they do really well. So as we think through this, really being able to identify places where it's beneficial and appropriate to use these tools for the creation of open learning resources or within professional practice, and where it doesn't make sense to do so.
I'm wondering if you have any words of advice, words of encouragement for our viewers, our listeners, regarding, for example, developing and engaging in open learning opportunities, pursuing their own interests in learning experience design, or even exploring the potential of generative AI as a design partner in the ways that you've been described.
So there's a lot to think about here. And I think my words of advice for our viewers and listeners would be similar to what we share with our students in our, both in the online version of our Learning Experience Design Certificate and in the campus-based one, which is it's really important to develop your professional identity and cultivate professional networks. And so, for all of these spaces, I recommend that our viewers and listeners join different professional societies. Sort of look and see what's out there. What are some examples of instructional design or learning experience design societies that can really help them be at the forefront of the field to stay connected, even after they've completed their coursework here at Marsal or completed their online work. And so, if you have the ability to take advantage of institutional memberships or student memberships, I encourage our listeners and viewers to do that, but really sort of remain connected to that world. And, get on mailing lists, attend webinars, go to local conferences, read newsletters and blog posts and posts on LinkedIn or other places, special issues of things, and then start to, create your own content, start to develop your own voice and sort of put your ideas out there. Maybe you're experimenting with Gen AI or whatever it might be. Put that out there, get feedback on it, and really just become part of the community. So that would be my advice. Yeah.
Rebecca, this has been really terrific. Thank you for joining us in the Marsal Education Innovator Showcase series.
Well, thanks, Dawn, and to the EdHub team and to our viewers and listeners. It's really been wonderful taking some time to talk together about open learning environments and learning experience design and the potential for making these available to global audiences of learners. So thanks very much.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to the Marsal Family School of Education's Innovator Showcase series, and special thanks to Rebecca Quintana for sharing her work on open access learning opportunities, learning experience design, and generative AI. For more resources related to today's conversation, be sure to check out the links in our show notes. And don't forget to follow the Marsal Family School of Education on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube to stay connected with our community and to hear more about upcoming conversations. Thank you for joining us.